Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. We are going to be going over Article 1 of the United States Constitution. So, the first words are very famous, we the people of the United States. This is to symbolize how the people have the power instead of a king that we were fighting so hard to get away from. It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Posterity here simply means the future generations. Section 1 says all legislative powers herein shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. That's where we get our legislative branch from. And Section 2 outlines how long the term for the House of Representatives is every second year. So every even-numbered year, we have an election to elect our our representatives in the House of Representatives. The second paragraph in Section 2 says, no person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States. So this part outlines the requirements needed to be a member of the House of Representatives. And it also says you must be an inhabitant of that state in which you shall be chosen. So you don't have to live in the district you represent, but you do have to live in the state. In this third paragraph, it says that according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number. This essentially just means that the districts will get assigned based on a state's population, which is part of the Virginia Plan of the Great Compromise. The Virginia Plan wanted states to have proportional representation in a federal Congress based on population, and the New Jersey Plan wanted equal representation for all states. The Great Compromise combined these two to create the system that we have today, a bicameral legislature. So districts represent people, and at first, the Constitution states that the amount of people one person can represent will not exceed 30,000. This part has been scrapped, and the current average representation in Congress is one representative for every 750,000 people. It says 3/5 of all other persons down here. That part has been repealed by the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery in the United States. And over here, it says the number of representatives, I've already done that part. Each state will have at least one representative. So each state gets at least one person to represent the state in Congress. One example would be Wyoming or Alaska, each of them have one statewide representative, compared to somewhere like Florida that has 28, based on population, of course. So over here, it outlines how much representation each of these 13 original states, former colonies, got before the first census. You had to have some way to start off this country, and we'll see that throughout the rest of the Constitution. It says, when vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. It's essentially saying that the state governor can call a special election to fill any vacancies within Congress of their state. The House of Representatives shall choose the Speaker and other officers, which essentially means that the House of Representatives will do an internal vote to pick the leader of the House, called the Speaker, the House Speaker, instead of it being a direct election by the people. The House Speaker can be anyone, but it's usually a member of the House that they pick. The current House Speaker is Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Now, the way they spell choose here is strange because of the way the English language worked at the time of this Constitution being written. They didn't have any standardized way of writing things, so people would just kind of go off of what they felt was correct. So choose within the Constitution is spelled C-H-U-S-E. We now spell it C-H-O-O-S-E. So yes. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers. Essentially, yeah. So the Senate is in Section 3. They shall be chosen by the legislature thereof. This was the case up until the early 1900s with the passage of the 17th Amendment, which gave direct election of senators. Before then, the state legislatures would choose who would represent the state in the Senate. And they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes, which offers a certain amount of senators to be up for each election. This is what we call a staggered election. So about a third of the Senate will be up for election every 2 years, including the entirety of the House of Representatives. 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. That's what that means. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. This is essentially meaning governors can appoint people to vacancies, and then a special election will occur so that the people can choose who represents them in Congress. But the 17th Amendment took the state legislature out of the process. So this next part basically lays out the rules for the qualifications that you have to have in order to become a senator. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States. This is a little higher than the House of Representatives because the Senate is the upper house and the House of Representatives is the lower house in Congress. So it's a bit more elite. They must still live in the state they represent, and the vice president shall be president of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. Remember, the Senate always has an equal number of people because each state gets 2 senators, so it'll always add up to an equal number. This is the main power of the vice president, other than being the president in waiting should something happen to the current president. The Senate shall choose, there's that word again, choose their other officers, and also have a Senate president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of president of the United States. So this is essentially saying that the pro tempore shall become the president of the Senate should the vice president not be there. This is usually the case, as the vice president usually only shows up to the Senate when it looks likely that there's a tie that will need to be broken. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. The House of Representatives is allowed to, they have the sole power of impeachment, but if they impeach someone, it goes to the Senate to either convict or acquit them of whatever the House has charged that official with. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office, so the Senate can't jail someone or offer a capital punishment. They can only be removed from office is as far as an impeachment will go under the Constitution. Section 4 says the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. So this is essentially saying that states and Congress regulate elections to have a uniform time across the country. The Congress shall assemble at least once every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December. This part was removed. Unless they shall law appoint a date. Unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Section 5 says the majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. This essentially means a quorum is needed to allow the body to function. So in the Senate, we currently have 100 senators, so a quorum under the Constitution would be 51 senators, and in the House, out of 435, 218 would need to show up for the House to conduct business. A smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. So essentially, this is allowing whoever is presiding over each chamber to either ask for a roll call or to just skip that altogether. So we can just assume that there's a quorum. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, which is where we get House and Senate rules. This may include dress code, what speech is allowed on the House floor, how long. This includes things like the filibuster in the Senate, and it would require the Senate to vote again to change the Senate rules in order to get something like that repealed. They may punish its members for disorderly behavior and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. So this would be 667 in the Senate to expel a member of the Senate, and 290 in the House to expel a member. This was most recently used to oust George Santos of New York after his ID was questioned. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may be in their judgment require secrecy. So it's essentially saying that the chamber needs to be transparent with the people of the United States, and each House meeting, Senate meeting, whatever they're doing that day is available on house.gov, senate.gov, congress.gov, or even the National Archives. At the desire of 1/5 of those present be entered on the journal. So it's essentially saying that there can be a motion to count votes, which is usually a voice vote where members say aye or nay, whichever one seems to be in the majority will pass, and members can also ask for a physical head count. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting. So this is what we call a pro forma session and can be used as a check on presidential appointments, which is usually the case, including when the Supreme Court has an open seat and the Senate and President are not aligned. Section 6 starts with, the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services. So this is essentially saying that members of Congress will get paid for their services. It's currently a base salary of $174,000 a year, but the Speaker of the House and Vice President get a salary of $220,000 a year. At the end of that paragraph, it says, no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. This is essentially saying that you can only serve in one office at a time. You can't have two at a time. So we move on to the second page. In section 7, towards the top of the second paragraph there, it says, if he shall not return it with objections to the House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. This is essentially saying that the president has the power to veto a bill, which is where the president doesn't sign a bill into law, but sends it back to Congress for reconsideration. After that, it says, after such reconsideration, 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill. It shall be sent, together with the objections, to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. This is where we get a veto override. If the president vetoes something, the Congress still has the chance to use a 2/3 majority to pass that bill again, and it becomes law without the signature of the president. And towards the end of that paragraph and at the beginning of the next, it talks about the presentment clause, which is essentially saying that the president must be presented with any bills, laws, or orders that the Congress makes. Section 8 ends its first paragraph with, all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So before the Constitution was the Articles of Confederation, which was essentially if the U.S. was more like the European Union, where each state has their own autonomy and comes together to form one blanket government. So that was kind of disastrous, as the federal government under the Articles of Confederation didn't have much power. So throughout the Articles 1 through 7 are tiny little things like this that essentially establish and affirm the authority of the federal government. This one is essentially saying that excises, duties, and imposts cannot vary by states. And then it goes on to list a bunch of powers and duties of Congress, because in the 10th Amendment, we remember that specific powers of Congress must be stated in the Constitution, and powers not stated go to the states. So in order to create a stronger federal government under this Constitution, they outline some important things like coining money, providing and maintaining a navy and army, and constituting tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. On Section 8, continued, over here, it says that Congress is the seat of government of the United States, because the framers originally wanted the legislature to be the most powerful branch, but as time went on, the executive took on that role. The last paragraph starts with, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. This essentially gives Congress justification to make almost any law, and was left vague intentionally to give the Congress enough power to counter any situation. It has been used quite liberally in some cases, and is quite controversial. This is the necessary and proper clause. Section 9 says, the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808. This essentially kicks the slavery issue down the road, and in 1808 the states do agree to end the slave trade, but not slavery itself. So they will stop importing slaves using the Middle Passage, but the slaves that are in the United States will stay slaves and will continue to work as slaves. Underneath that, it says, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion to the public safety may require. So this is essentially allowing a declaration of martial law under extreme circumstances. And under that, it says, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. This is essentially saying that you can't try past crimes under new laws. If breaking into a store was not illegal at the time you did it, but now it is illegal, they can't try you for breaking into that store because that law didn't exist when you did. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. This is, again, the Constitution trying to unify the country instead of having 13 different countries all loosely tied together. It's essentially saying the United States is the country and is trying to establish federal authority over the states. Underneath that, it says, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. This essentially regulates how federal employees can authorize payments by the Treasury Department. And under that, it says, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or sovereign or foreign state. This is essentially saying people who represent the United States can't have foreign titles. So if the King of England wants to give an honorary title of prince to a member of Congress, the member of Congress must reject that offer under the Constitution. Section 10 is essentially establishing federal authority over the states and showing that these states are not their own country. It's essentially barring state governments from doing certain things, like keep troops, have their own letters of marque, and other things. So that's all for Article 1. I hope you will join me in the next video where we talk about Article 2. Thank you.